Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Happy Black Monday to all who celebrate. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, I'm just going to get right into it, man. No celebration for you today, unfortunately. The Giants not a fan of Black Monday this year.
Yeah, I was about to say to all who celebrate, not me. I don't get to celebrate this year. Giants retaining head coach Brian Daboll and general manager Joe Schoen. Listen, this is something that, over the past few episodes, we've talked about being a stronger possibility than we once thought. It sounded like the Giants were moving this way. We got the confirmation this morning that this is their decision. They are retaining this regime that has utterly fallen flat on its face and failed over the last 2 years. So definitely a lot to discuss with this. I'm not a happy camper today, but you know what? I'll try and at least shine some positivity on it, but it's a pretty negative day right now for Giants fans.
Yeah, you know what? It's hard for me to come on here and say otherwise on that, just because when you look at what the Giants have been through the last few years, yes, they had that one, the surprise season in 2022, but the last few years have been just an absolute utter disaster. They lose in the finale after blowing their chance for the number 1 pick the week prior. And they retain their guys anyway in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I was still on going into today that I thought the Giants would scapegoat Brian Daboll and that they would retain Joe Schoen. But we get the news that they are retaining both. It sounds like you're not really all that surprised by it. Still disappointed, but you don't really sound too surprised.
I'm not entirely surprised because all of the reports yesterday were indicating that this is likely the outcome. I mean, even Jay Glazer was saying on Fox, and dude, he's got the craziest track record when it comes to Giants scoops. Anytime Jay Glazer says something, he's right about it. And so when he was saying that the Giants are leaning towards retaining Brian Daboll, it told me that they are going to retain Brian Daboll. So not entirely shocked today, but I will say to spin that positive light on it as I discussed, this is the better alternative to keeping Schoen and firing Daboll, as I said. I think it would have been asinine to keep one and fire the other. I think it's asinine to keep them both, but, cleaning house was the correct course of action, in my opinion. But if you're not going to clean house, retain everybody and give them one more year. Don't have your head coach and GM on different cycles, fighting for different things. Keep them in lockstep. And at the very least, we do know that Schoen and Daboll are in lockstep with one another. So just keep it that way. Hope that they turn around this year. And if they don't, a full house cleaning will be in order in 2026.
Yeah. And I think that honestly, like how you set it up there was good, but I would be nervous with 2 guys who are going into a season on an extremely, extremely hot seat and kind of just looking at how the last 2 Giants GMs tenures ended. Going into their final year, they spent a ton of free agency money and put a ton of resources into trying to get it right with that version of the team. And I guess my question for you is is that a level of concern that they are going to try too much to almost win now in a way and expedite this rebuild and try to, buy in free agency and then kind of just get stuck?
Absolutely. That's my biggest concern. We've seen this happen before. We saw Jerry Reese with his back against the wall spend an egregious amount of money. It basically bought them a playoff berth, literal money bought them a playoff berth in 2016. They did nothing with that playoff berth, and they flamed out hard in 2017. It's the same thing with Dave Gettleman. Spent a lot of money, screwed up the roster. Joe Schoen inherited a mess. But here's the thing. Joe Schoen inherited a mess, and he made it even messier. Somehow it's worse. After 3 years, even John Mara said today he's not confident that this roster is better than when Schoen inherited it. And that just was crazy to me. The fact that John Mara even said that, the fact that he said that this roster might not be better than the one they inherited, it might be worse. If it's worse, then why the hell are you keeping the general manager who made a bad roster even worse? It doesn't add up to me. I truly don't understand it, but here's what's making it add up to me. Here's what I'm trying to interpret from all of the reports, and I found this interesting. It was Diana Rossini this morning, and it was also Jordan Schultz yesterday, both of them reporting that John Mara had conversations around the league with different head coach and GM candidates over the last week, gauging their interest in the positions, basically putting out some feelers and doing some due diligence. If we fire these guys, who could we bring in? The fact that they went through that process and decided to retain both of them tells me nobody wanted this job. They're stuck with Shane and Dable is what I think is happening here, because Mara is very clear and obvious. I mean, when he was speaking with the media today, he said he's out of patience. He said that he's not sure if this roster is any better. He said that he wants Dable to give up play calling. He said he wants to make a change on the defensive coaching staff. I mean, he basically said that he wants to change everything, yet he's not changing anything. So to me, it tells me he tried to find a replacement. Nobody wanted the Giants' job. He's stuck with Shane and Dable. He doesn't want to bring them back, but he has to.
Yeah, and that's a really tough place to be. And those comments on Joe Shane are just really damning, that they don't know if the roster, that the owner came out and was like, I don't know if the roster is better today than it was 3 years ago, is not a ringing endorsement to keep the GM. But as you stated there, like, maybe they were in a spot where they wouldn't have been able to get good candidates, and they're just hoping that maybe they find their answer at quarterback and things can change here. And that kind of goes into Justin's question that I wanted to pull up. He goes, what do you think the chances of the Giants getting a chance to draft their quarterback? I wouldn't mind taking Travis Hunter round 1 and taking a quarterback in round 2. Just like, what's the play here?
So the play here is that you have to take a quarterback in the first round no matter what. That's been my stance, and that's going to remain my stance. Even if you're not fully convinced that this quarterback you're taking is a franchise quarterback, you have to hope that you're wrong in this instance, and you have to throw a dart at the board. That needs to be the strategy. The Giants haven't drafted a quarterback in 6 years. That in and of itself is malpractice to me. Even the teams with the best quarterbacks in the NFL draft quarterbacks in the middle rounds at least, knowing either we're getting a solid backup on a rookie contract, or if something happens to our franchise quarterback, we maybe have a player with upside to become our next franchise quarterback. Even the Patriots, when they had Tom frickin' Brady, of all people, drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. Even the Lions, the best roster in the NFL, Jared Goff's not going anywhere. They drafted Hendon Hooker. The 49ers only have a franchise right now because they drafted Brock Purdy in the 7th round after trading multiple first-round picks to draft Trey Lance. So the fact that the Giants haven't hedged any of their bets and even made an attempt to find the quarterback is the reason that they're in this mess. So in the first round of this draft, I get where Justin's coming from with that comment. A lot of people don't want to force the quarterback pick. That is how the best teams find quarterbacks, is by forcing the quarterback pick. Josh Allen was considered overdrafted. Patrick Mahomes was considered overdrafted. I mean, it's all across the league. CJ Stroud was a debatable pick. There are so many instances of teams forcing quarterbacks and being wrong about forcing it. They ended up being right by making the selection, and that's where the Giants are now. So let's say, for example, the top 2 quarterbacks come off the board. It's Sanders and Ward, 1 and 2. You probably do go BPA if you're the New York Giants at 3 and you don't take a quarterback, but you still have to walk out of the first round with a quarterback because you need somebody on a rookie contract with a 5th-year option. You have to throw a dart at the board. So then you're probably talking about doing what the Ravens did. In 2018, they needed a quarterback. They weren't in range to draft a top guy. They went BPA in the first round. They traded back up into the end of the first round and drafted Lamar Jackson. That would be the strategy for the New York Giants. You go BPA at 3 if you can't land the quarterback that you like. Then you trade back up into the first round with your 2nd-round pick, and you take the next best quarterback there. That's my opinion. That's the strategy for the Giants. If you can't get the guy at 3, you still have to get one in the first round.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And by the way, while you were talking, I just wanted to pull up what the trade was for the Ravens to get back into the first round to grab Lamar Jackson. They traded up to pick 32, and they sent their 2nd-round pick, which was pick 52, pick 125, and a 2019 2nd-round pick in exchange for the 32nd pick and 132.
Yeah, so I'm more than comfortable trading away the 2026 2nd-round pick if that means that I'm drafting a quarterback in the first round. And that could end up being a guy who's projected to go in the 3rd. But you have to make sure that you get the quarterback. You can't give other teams an opportunity to take him from you. So even if you're drafting Jackson Dart at 27 overall in the 2nd round, because the Giants are picking high in the 2nd round, or I'm sorry, in the first round. So they're picking high in the 2nd round so they can trade up a little bit higher into the first round. If you're taking the 3rd round projected Jackson Dart at 27 overall or wherever you would be taking him, it's worthwhile investment because you just have to throw a dart at the board and hope that everybody's 3rd round projection is wrong and he's actually more talented than you think and he is worth a 1st round pick. That's the thing with quarterbacks. You can draft one at 2, Zach Wilson. You could draft one at 3, Sam Darnold. You can miss on those quarterbacks. Or you could draft one at 32 and you can hit Lamar Jackson. Quarterbacks are never a guarantee. They are always a crapshoot, whether you take them in the 1st round, 2nd round, and so on and so forth. So even if you think this guy is a 2nd round prospect and you're taking him at 10 overall or wherever you are taking him, you got to take him anyway because nobody knows what the hell they're doing when evaluating quarterbacks regardless. The most sure thing guys, Trevor Lawrence, not a sure thing. So you just have to roll the dice and throw a dart at the board. And that's why I'm so frustrated that the Giants haven't taken a single quarterback at any point in 6 years. They could have found a franchise quarterback at some point. They could have lucked into one like most teams do. Most teams luck into these guys. Giants haven't even given themselves an opportunity to find that luck. So you got to overdraft the quarterback position, have to throw a dart at the board and take one in the 1st round, no matter what.
And you have to get lucky too. Like you said, part of it is kind of just getting lucky. Like, unfortunately for like the crosstown rivals for the Jets, they took 2 quarterbacks in the top 3 and neither worked out for them, and Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson. Now Sam's having some success in Minnesota now, but it took him to a 7th season in order to figure it out, and he had to be on his 4th team in order for him to figure it out. So it's not easy. Sometimes you think you're getting a sure thing at the top of the draft. Hell, even if they did end up with the number 1 or over 2 pick in this draft, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, you can like him or dislike him as a prospect, but there's no guarantee that either one of those guys are a sure thing. I think that's the way, especially if the draft board goes 1 and 2 with Shedeur and Cam Ward in whatever order. It's 2 quarterback needy teams, unfortunately, in front of the Giants picking. So I think you would have to take the unique unicorn kind of player in Travis Hunter and then try to make that move again. But again, it's a tough couple of weeks for the Giants after losing that 1st overall pick and now finding out you're retaining both guys.
It's very tough, and they could have secured that 1st overall pick. It was totally possible, but then you see the report or the quote from John Mara today. He said, if the New York Giants tanked those games, everybody would have been fired. He's a short-sighted owner, and this is a short-sighted team that doesn't think long-term, and that's why they make decisions that are reactionary decisions based on the final 2 weeks of the season. That's why these guys are being retained. The New York Giants are a mess. Like, they really are. They don't understand how the other teams around the NFL build their rosters. Even teams like, we saw the Browns tank yesterday. We saw the Titans tank. Like, these teams are tanking, and they're ending up in better positions than the Giants. The Giants actively making things harder for themselves and retaining bad GMs and coaches. This is just classic New York Giants. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see how it goes once we get to April in the draft. It's a long process. Again, I mentioned guys like Jackson Dart. I didn't even mention Drew Aller. He plays well on Thursday in the college football playoffs. He lights it up for 2 weeks in the playoffs, somehow wins a national championship. He's going to be a top 5 pick. And then the Giants are going to have that solution at number 3, whether that's Ward, Aller, or Sanders. They're going to have an opportunity. So there's still a lot that needs to be resolved between now and April. But again, if you're not able to get that guy in the 1st round, or with your 1st pick, that 2nd pick needs to be that guy. If even you want to call it the Jalen Hurts route when the Eagles took him, whatever the case is, you have to at least throw a dart at the board for the quarterback position. Hope that you're wrong and hope that you get the pick right.
Yeah, and even the Titans tried it. It didn't work, obviously, but they tried it with Malik Willis and then Will Levis in back-to-back drafts. And like we said, obviously that didn't work, and you're hoping for a better result. But at least they went down swinging, and that's where I think we are with the Giants in the quarterback spot. You have to at least try to get their guy. I don't see a veteran going the veteran quarterback route for this team with the pressure that's on both Dable and Joe Schoen.
Yeah, I think they sign one, and my prediction is going to be that it's Justin Fields because I think he just makes a lot of sense for Dable. So I think it happens, but you have to hedge your bets here, and this is what I've been saying. The Minnesota Vikings are the 5 seed in the NFC with a 14-3 record because they signed Sam Darnold and drafted J.J. McCarthy. If they went into that draft saying we're going to draft a quarterback and he's going to start for us 17 games, they'd be screwed because J.J. McCarthy tore his knee. But they also signed somebody. Even look at Washington, and when was it, 2013 maybe? I don't know. Whenever they drafted Robert Griffin III, still also drafted Kirk Cousins, You hedge your bets at the quarterback position. The Giants haven't done that. That's been my criticism of them all season, all year since last April. I said they should have hedged this Daniel Jones bet. They should have taken a quarterback at some time in the 2025 NFL draft. They elected not to. They had no insurance for Daniel Jones flaming out. And here we are as a result in a lost season, the worst season in franchise history statistically, and a very, very murky future and path ahead. But the best teams, the Vikings, the Packers, when they traded for Malik Willis, he helped them win some games. The Giants should have done something like that. They could have traded for Justin Fields. Fields and Wilson hedged their bets. Again, look at all of these playoff teams. All of them hedged their bets at the quarterback position. Meanwhile, the New York Giants didn't have a backup plan, and that's why they're in the position that they're in.
It's a really tough spot for the Giants. It's going to be a really interesting offseason for them. A very busy few months ahead. Anything else on this Giants news before we get over to the New York Jets side of things and their laundry list of guys that they will be interviewing for head coach and GM positions?
I don't know what to say anymore about this team. Honestly, I'm actually excited to talk about the Jets, though, honestly, because there are a lot of intriguing candidates. So you know what? I don't want to talk about the Giants anymore. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Jets.
Perfect. All right. We'll start with the head coaching list that they have come up with so far. Here's the list of either people that they interviewed or that they have requested for to be interviewed. Mike Vrabel, Ron Rivera, Rex Ryan, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Joe Brady, Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, Brian Greasy, Aaron Glenn, Vance Joseph, and Bobby Slowick. Looking at this list, what jumps out to you as either on the positive side or on the negative side here?
Well, first and foremost, not on this list. I saw Ben Johnson and the Jets won't be meeting because Johnson just didn't want the job. I think that's notable. I think it does highlight the fact that this is not exactly the most favorable and desirable position, coaching position. But what really stands out to me is there are a lot of defensive-minded coaches on here. Few offensive with McCown, with Brady, Matt Nagy, and Arthur Smith, sure. But Aaron Glenn, Vance Joseph, Rex Ryan, Brian Flores, those are defensive-minded coaches, Vrabel and Ron Rivera as well. Seems like that's the way that the Jets are leaning. There are a few intriguing offensive picks here, but the guys that I think are stronger candidates for the position happen to be defensive, personally, in my opinion. And I think that's the way that the Jets are going to go. But it's a decent list of candidates. However, it does feel like a clear and obvious number one is missing from this list.
Yeah, Ben, I wasn't surprised to see Ben Johnson not on the list just because of all the rumblings of the kind of situation he was looking for. Supposedly he wants to interview for the Patriots job, and we'll get a chance to do that. And there's been a lot of rumblings with Vrabel since Mayo got let go yesterday, and it seemed like a lock that Vrabel was going to go to New England. And I think more likely than not, he gets the New England job, but I'm not willing to rule him out for this Jets job. He's still, I think, the best candidate on the market, and I would hope that it would be him. But going down the list, some names that jump out in a positive. I like Brian Flores. I know you mentioned another defensive coach, but I thought he had some success in Miami. I know that the Tua situation didn't end well, but hoping that he's learned from that a little bit. And right underneath him, Josh McCown, the Vikings quarterback coach. The thought of like a duo almost of bringing in Brian Flores as the head coach and Josh McCown taking that next step from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator, I think that's a route that I can get behind, and one of my favorite fallback options if Mike Vrabel isn't actually an option here and if he ends up in New England.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that would be awesome. I think that's definitely among the top scenarios to lay out for the Jets. I think Brian Flores is a phenomenal coach. I think he deserves another head coaching crack at it. But I also think in a similar vein to the one that you just mentioned with Flores and McCown, I would also highlight Vance Joseph here as a potential defensive coach who takes in as head coach and probably brings former Giants quarterback Davis Webb along with him as his offensive coordinator. Very smart mind. I believe did he hang around the Jets for a little bit too?
He was on their practice squad, if memory serves correct.
I think so. Davis Webb is a really smart mind, done wonders with Bo Nix. And actually, if you read it deep into the 2022 season for the Giants, I think Davis Webb deserves more credit for the development of Daniel Jones than Shea Tierney does, the quarterback's coach of the Giants. So that's a name that I would just keep an eye on. If Vance Joseph, does well in his interview, I could see a potential pairing of him and Davis Webb as OC.
Okay. I wouldn't Vance Joseph doesn't really move me as a candidate. That's not really a route that I would like to go down. Yes, he does have experience as a head coach, and that's something that has kept coming up when people around the league talk about the Jets, is that they're interested in guys who've had coaching experience. And of this list, to me, Vrabel and Flores are really the only ones who jump out as guys who have had NFL head coaching experience that I would like. Ron Rivera, I don't like that idea as a head coach. Matt Nagy and Arthur Smith, I'd put in almost like the Adam Gase tier if the Jets made that decision. I get it that, Nagy made the playoffs one year with Mitch Trubisky, but unfortunately got two cracks at trying to develop Trubisky and then Justin Fields in year one, and neither ended up working out. Arthur Smith did a horrendous job in Atlanta as a head coach. That doesn't look great. And then some of the OCs, I really like Joe Brady. I think he's done a really good job, even outside of Buffalo. I know people are going to point to Buffalo and say, well, this is just Josh Allen. And some of that is true because he's an alien type of quarterback, but I liked what he did at LSU. I thought he had some early success with Sam Darnold in Carolina before that kind of fell. And then Bobby Slowick, big name last year, had a really disappointing second season with the Texans and CJ Stroud. So I'm not as warm as I was on him a year ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised. What's his name? I can't remember his name. The Buccaneers offensive coordinator.
Ian Cohen.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's not on this list. Maybe he will be, though. Maybe they add him to the list eventually. But I think he's a strong candidate as well, especially when comparing to some of the other offensive-minded candidates on that list, like a Nagy and an Arthur Smith. That's just the one route I hope the Jets don't take, is those two guys, those retread, former failed head coaches that had bad offenses when they were head coaches but are offensive-minded coaches. Similar to what we're seeing with Brian Daboll right now, like a head coach who's touted as being this offensive genius, who has a failed offense when he is the head coach. That would be the worst case scenario for me, for the Jets. Just don't go that route, because I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment in that way. Either take the next Sean McVay and that route, where you're taking the young offensive coordinator ready for a jump, or go ahead and take the defensive coordinator who's going to bring stability and bring in a great offensive mind with him. But those fraudulent offensive masterminds like Smith and Nagy, leave those guys on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That would be going backwards, I think, in my opinion. And I wanted to bring up some of the GM names. The Jets just added 2 more to this list, so I'll pull those up at the end. But Mike Borgonzi, Ray Farmer, Alec Halaby, Thomas Dimitroff, John Robinson, Jim Nagy, Louis Riddick, and they have also added Ryan Grigson, who is with Minnesota, as well as Mike Greenberg, who's the assistant GM in Tampa Bay, who is from Long Island and grew up a Jets fan.
Well, that usually helps with our Giants and Jets teams. Those guys who happen to be from the area, those guys get a lot of jobs here.
They do.
For better or for worse, usually for worse, unfortunately. But I like Borgonzi. I think he makes a ton of sense. I also am curious to see, I think his last name is Weedle, Steelers. He's a front office executive and assistant. I'm curious to see if he gets any looks for the Jets or any other jobs around the league, because he's somebody who, in my early searches for potential Giants replacements, I looked at. Curious to see if he ends up being added to this list. But if I have to look at this list, I think Borgonzi stands out as the clear favorite for me. I wouldn't go with the analysts' route of Jim Nagy or Louis Riddick, Thomas Dimitroff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who John Robinson is, but none of those names move me. Obviously, taking somebody from the Eagles front office could be very exciting with Halaby, and then Ray Farmer, Chiefs front office, same thing. But Borgonzi's somebody that I do really like.
Yeah, Borgonzi's probably my number one candidate. There is a slight fear of just looking at Borgonzi as an assistant with the Chiefs that he would bring Matt Nagy with him. And if that's the case, then I would say no, thank you, obviously. John Robinson was the GM in Tennessee. Kind of ended up beefing at the end with Mike Vrabel. So if you want to hire Vrabel, don't hire John Robinson. He traded away A.J. Brown, which Vrabel was not a very big fan of. Greenberg, I think, is interesting. He kind of is kind of like the cap guy in Tampa Bay. So I'm in on that one. Really, the only guy that I think is missing from this GM list is Ray Agnew with the Lions. But I think you pretty much nailed it. overall, in both the GM and head coach, Liam Cohen, Ray Agnew, if those two guys get added to the list, this is pretty much it. Like with like legitimate options that I think the Jets could talk to and eventually hire.
And I will say, I am impressed that they've cast such a wide net. Like you said, this is pretty much it. This is a long list. There are a lot of names on this list. This is a longer list than any other team. Even the Saints fired their coach midseason. They don't have a list like this just yet. So I will give credit to Woody Johnson and the Jets and the 33rd team for doing their due diligence and working hard to put together a list like this. But we'll see ultimately what path that they take, and that's going to be the crucial next step. But yeah, I think if I had to make an early prediction, I'm going to pick a GM who's not on this list, who you just mentioned, and Agnew, and I think Aaron Glenn is going to be head coach for the Jets. That'll be my early prediction for how this shakes out.
Yeah, I could see that. To me, and this is just feel, and this could totally change in the next couple of weeks, but I think most likely is that pairing that you just mentioned, or Grigson, Flores, McCown from the Vikings, like bringing that trio over. And Grigson I don't really like the work that he's done. He was the Colts longtime GM. I didn't think he did a great job there. But I do really like the Flores McCown duo. That's something that I could get behind. And as I mentioned, I think Vrabel's my number one choice. But if we take that off the table, like let's just assume like the league does right now that he's going to New England, I think my pivot would be Flores and McCown. And I do think it's interesting that they're bringing in McCown for his own interview. He did interview for the Texans job a few years ago when like he was a player like 5 minutes before he got that interview, but has gotten a lot of experience as a quarterback coach. I don't think he's ready to be a head coach in this league, but I do think he's ready to take over as a coordinator and call plays.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he gets a head coaching job, though. I think, we often see some big jumps, people taking a chance on offensive minds who seem to be really, really smart at what they do. And he is ready for a larger role for sure, whether it's OC or HC. But I think that's going to be a guy who interviews really well and sells a team on a vision. And so I could totally see Josh McCown getting a job, whether it's with the Jets or someone else. But I know we've mentioned before, the Jets typically lean defensive coach anyway. So I think that those guys are going to be the stronger candidates for the Jets to consider. But it is a strong list of candidates. And again, I'm going to give credit to Woody Johnson and the 33rd team for putting together this list, because there are quite a few names that I could see end up working out for the Jets. Again, I don't know if there's that clear cut, this is the number one guy for me. I know you seem to lean Flores in that respect. But overall, I do like this list, and I think there are a few intriguing options.
Yeah, definitely. And just a couple thoughts here as we wrap. We're going to do like a half hour today. I do know that the Jets, and there's been a lot of turnover, but still, from Josh McCown's time with the Jets in 2017 and 2018, they loved McCown in that building. And I feel like he's loved everywhere he goes. So would not be the most surprising thing if he was brought in as either option, as a head coach or offensive coordinator. And then my other thought was, we got a good Woody Johnson quote today, like we're on giving Woody credit. And I rip Woody Johnson a lot. I think he's done a pretty poor job as an owner, but I'm going to call it like I see it and give him praise where it needs to be. One, I like the big list, as you mentioned, for both the GM and head coach. But number two, he also said today that he's going to let the GM and head coach, whoever that may be, make the decision on Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's the most important thing here, is that it's not going to be a Woody decision one way or the other if he would stay or go. And most of the reports have been that Woody Johnson wants Rodgers out. But I thought it was important that he actually said it out loud, if it's true or not, that he's going to let the GM and coach make that decision. That's
huge. Big time. Like, that's major. And I hope he makes the right decision, whoever it is that gets brought in. And I hope they send Aaron Rodgers packing. I'm tired of him, as you know. But no, that is definitely important. I think it's always important for the owner, whoever they hire at GM, they need to have full autonomy. You have to let the GM make those decisions, and you can't have your teenage son get involved. So we'll see how true to his word Woody Johnson remains.
Yeah, we'll see if he's able to stay true to his word. I really hope that he is. And just the vibes yesterday too, by the way, tell me if you feel differently, but it felt like Aaron Rodgers is retiring after how that broadcast was going. They kept saying like, oh, is this his last game and this and that? And just, we got the touchdown pass to Devontae. He hit the 500th touchdown. Devontae kept the ball also. Rodgers kept the ball for the Breece Hall touchdown at the end too. So kind of has me feeling that I think he's just going to hang it up here.
I think so too, and I think that's in the best interest of all parties involved. I think let's just peacefully resolve this, go out on a win versus the Dolphins and with some touchdown balls in your pocket. Sure, that's fine. Let's just move on. But yeah, I agree with you. I think he's going to retire.
One last comment here from Rico the Pup, which I thought was very fitting. It's sad that it's noteworthy when an owner says he'll let people do their job and won't interfere. Owner acts rationally is the headline. LOL. It's a sad reality, but we got to point it out. Like, hey, this is a good thing. This is not the norm.
Yeah, true that. I mean, it is a sad reality, but it also is hopefully an indicator that things are moving in the right direction, which I think every move that the Jets have made so far during this process has been an indicator of, like bringing a different third party to get involved with this process. They're finally doing things in a way that I think is respectable and hopefully the right way. I mean, we'll see long term whether it ends up being the right way, but I do think it's all been steps in the right direction this offseason. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. So good stuff. That'll do it for us on this episode. It's a busy Monday. So we're going to let Anthony get back to doing his Giants coverage. I'm going to have a video later today breaking down the Jets options that they're interviewing for both GM and head coach. So it's probably gonna be like 45 minutes with how long this list is. We're going to give it a few more hours, see if any more names come in. So make sure to stay tuned to Anthony for the Giants fallout the rest of the day. Me, you can check me out at Matt O'Leary NY for the Jet stuff. That'll do it. We'll catch you next time.